Today is Tuesday, May 29th, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On today's show, we check in with Barnstable Police Department after a busy Memorial Day weekend, and we have an in-depth conversation about the marijuana moratorium. A look at today's weather. Look out, summer returns today, just today. It's partly cloudy, high 78. West winds shifting to northeast at 10 to 15 miles an hour, and look at this, sunset is at 8:06 this evening. Let's start with some news you can use. Friday, Town Manager Mark Ells announced he is moving forward with the appointment of Deputy Chief Matthew Sonnabend as the next police chief for the town of Barnstable, subject to approval by Town Council. Deputy Chief Sonnabend has served in the U.S. Army, Military Police, Falmouth and Barnstable Police Departments, spanning 21 years of law enforcement experience and advancing to his current position of Deputy Chief. Deputy Chief Sonnabend was one of two candidates that placed first on the police chief eligibility list resulting from the assessment center conducted in February as required by civil service and in the following civil service procedures as required for the hiring of our police chief. In making this decision, Mr. Ells also took into consideration the results of a citizen survey, community stakeholder panel, and an individual interview with the town manager. Mr. Ells plans to bring forward for Town Council ratification Deputy Chief Sonnabend as our next Chief of Police on June 7th, 2018. Up next, Deputy Chief Sonnabend in the Barnstable Police Department. On the phone with us this morning, Deputy Chief Matthew Sonnabend. I hear congratulations might be in order, sir.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Yes, I did get the nomination so far, and on the 7th, there'll be a presentation to the town council where hopefully everything will get ratified, and then we can make it permanent.
Excellent. Well, maybe the next time we talk, I'll give you a different name.
You can call me whatever you want. Just don't call me late for dinner, I think.
I love it. So there's been some movement on some training funds for the police departments here on Cape Cod through Julian Sears' efforts and the Cape delegation. And can you speak to us about how important it is for training for the police department?
Absolutely. Training in our line of work is very critical. We do have a once a year mandated training that we do through the state. It's called in service for all sworn officers, and it basically during that time you get recertified with your CPR, you get recertified on some defensive tactic stuff, and you get brought up to date on many of the updates that have come out in the laws. But a week really is not very much, and the funding source for that has never really been secure. So depending on what's going on in the budget, how the state's going, and whatever other ideas might come up. Some of that training money could have gotten cut or whatever. In fact, over the years, it has on several occasions. So Senator Sear proposed in the Senate to have a bill where where there would be a funding source for this, and the funding source was going to be a $2 surcharge on rental vehicle contracts, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you start adding that up, you figure of all the people that came down this weekend, renting
Right.
cars and everything else, visiting the place, generate a little bit of money, and that money would be dedicated solely towards funding police training, which is highly important, because if you don't stay up on the tactics, you don't stay up on the laws, people get rusty, and if people get rusty, people can get hurt, or people aren't out there doing their jobs right, or people get put at risk. And it's been amazing to me that over the course of my career that there was no real that money could just go away. It could just be taken and used for other things, or dedicated to something else that might come up on the radar, or might not be any at all one year. And it's tough. It's real hard to say that you trust in these people to go out and drive around and be put into positions, having to make decisions that other people's lives could be on the line, or responding to different calls, and you'd figure you want those people trained and adequately able to handle those things, especially if your loved one might be involved.
Right, and it's interesting to think that a lot of your training has to be in your budget and thought about a year in advance.
Well, it's true. We sit down. As a matter of fact, we're just finishing up our budget cycle this year. We're going to be doing our presentation here next week for our budget. We should start like in September, preparing everything and getting everything together. You got to kind of guess what might be coming along. And as far as police, some of the things are fairly traditional. You want to stay up on certain things, but if something happens in November that all of a sudden becomes a hot button topic, you might not have funded for it. So
Right.
it can be difficult.
And talking about funding, in the wake of recent events and the murder of Sean Gannon and his canine dog Nero being hurt, the Barnstable Canine Foundation has spearheaded an effort to get cameras for the dogs of Barnstable.
Yep.
There's a great event out there at Cape Cod Beer. We'll talk about it a little later in our newscast. But tell us how important those cameras can be to your canine units.
Well, particularly in incidents with Sergeant Gannon, when you put a dog into a situation, or like into a basement or into an attic, where the handler, sometimes you're using those dogs because you think it might be dangerous to a person. So you're trying to put the dog in there to try and find something or track someone, or the dog might get separated from the handler, and you don't know where the dog might be, or what the dog might be up to, or what the dog is seeing. So someone had a great idea, and I don't know why someone didn't think of it sooner, but you put a small camera on the dog, and the handler can have it through a smartphone app or something else like this, where he can see what the dog is seeing. So if he lets the dog go into a building or into a basement, or even into the woods to search for things, and he can see what the dog is seeing. If he gets separated from the dog, he can kind of figure out where the dog is and all that other stuff. So it can greatly improve the safety of not only the handler but other officers that might be involved, and the dog itself.
Right. And can you just tell me what the name of the beer is? I just think this is phenomenal. That
I know it's Cape Cod beer, but I do not know what the name of the beer.
Okay.
Fur Missile, that's what it is. Fur Missile beer.
And you call it fur missile because it looks like a missile being launched when the dog takes
When
off.
the dog takes off out of the car, that's what they used to call the dog, is a fur missile coming at you because it's moving so fast.
That's fantastic.
And that is June 1st.
June 1st. Thank you so much. Congratulations again, and we hope that it's a smooth process through Town Council.
Oh, me too.
Take care.
No problem. Have a great day. Bye.
Currently, the town of Barnstable has a moratorium on recreational marijuana, which is in place until December 31st this year. The town council is contemplating either regulating or banning the sale of recreational marijuana after the moratorium ends. We had an in-depth conversation with town councilor Britt Biedenbender, who has embarked on a due diligence quest to understand how the industry works, the successes, pitfalls, and safety. We welcome Town Councilor Britt Biedenbender here to the studio today to talk about several issues that she's got on her mind for Town Council, as well as overarching things around her precinct. Britt, welcome.
Thank you so much.
So the first thing I kind of wanted to talk about a little bit was you and another town councilor, Deb Dogwin, went out to Sierra Naturals to do some real legwork on the marijuana and cannabis industry and the ordinances and mandates and things that are happening here in Town Council. Tell us a little bit about your trip and what you learned.
Well, so, you know, the reason for going is that the town is faced with a significant decision on whether or not to ban or allow retail adult use marijuana. And regardless of where you sit on the issue, you know, we're talking about a major policy issue, and I think it really behooves anyone who's making any kind of policy decision to make sure that they are as educated on the issue as possible. And even if you're someone who's pro this, you know, you might not be aware of some of the nuances of the business, right? You might have assumptions about what it could be or what it can't be. And so for Deb and I, this trip was to make sure that we really understood what is that, if we were to allow that, what does that look like from an economic perspective, from a business perspective, that sort of seed to sale situation. You know, what can that industry look like? But also, how is it safeguarded? You know, what is the level of professionalism within the industry? You know, there's a lot of, I think, misconception about what that would look like. I think there's a lot of concern that if it were to be allowed in this town, that there's going to be these head shops or pot shops all over Main Street, right? And you're going to have big leaves all over the place, and you know, on the exterior buildings, and our kids are going to be walking by these storefronts, and people are going to be waving joints at them from the window, and it's so far from that. You know, first of all, zoning would take care of a lot of that, but in reality, if you visit one of these types of facilities, you come away with a very, very solid understanding of how this can sort of be the economics of the future. And I also felt a greater sense of security and confidence that the industry is very professional and can be extremely professional, can be extremely well run, and there's a diversity of industries that can be economic drivers that are looped into this whole retail marijuana business.
Right. So that visit kind of, you know, showed you the grow facility?
Everything.
Everything.
So it legit was everything up to retail sales.
Okay.
So what you drive up to the facility, it's a huge warehouse. There is nothing about it that indicates what goes on inside. It's a plain warehouse. It has the company name on the outside, but there is no other indication. There's no logo that has a cannabis plant on it, anything like that, right? Okay. So it's very understated, nondescript. Right outside the door, you pick up a faint whiff of what's happening inside, but it's pretty insubstantial.
Right.
You walk in the door, everything is gatekept, so you have security cards for every single door that you go through. You also, depending on the role that you play within the organization, you only can access certain areas of the building. You don't have, just because you're an employee doesn't mean you can go anywhere you want. In addition, highest standards, sanitary standards are followed, so we had to completely suit up. Hairnets, scrubs, booties, because that's part of the push behind the retail marijuana industry, is that it's regulating and securing the safety and the quality of the product for consumers. Because right now, because it's unregulated, if you go to a dealer and get it, you have no idea what's in that product. The plant is highly absorptive, takes in heavy metals, what have you. There's also been issues where fentanyl has been in the product. So this safeguards against all of that kind of intrusion. So the first place that we were taken on the tour is the grow section, sort of the cultivating section of the business. And it is legit seeds into soil, organically grown. You walk into a large room and it's just rows and rows of plants. And they do rotating crops. So you'll have one room that's almost at harvest, and then you have others that are just starting to grow the seedlings. So then from there, it starts to go into processing. So that means the plant is taken out, it's dried, it's cleaned up. And then it goes into sort of the how'd you call it? Sort of the production side,
Cultivation piece
yeah,
of
it's
it,
sort of like
right.
pulling out the extracts of what it is that you're selling. So it can either just be the product can either just be straight flour, and that's one pile, or there's a distillery, essentially, and that distills the essential oils out of the plant, which can be used in various ways. And there are also processes in place for extracting CBD from the plant as opposed to THC, because cannabinoids are what are looked at for the medicinal effects.
Correct.
Right? And so there are very strict guidelines about what dosing is in general for THC, but also dosing if you're looking for a higher CBD content, so on and so forth. So that happens within the building, within the warehouse. And then those various products, some go to straight packaging, like if it's flour, it just goes to straight packaging and everything is very carefully weighed and dosed out. Other products go to the bakery. And so the bakery will maybe make lozenges, or it'll make brownies, or whatever that case may be. And then all of those products end up in packaging, and then you're in the packaging room, and there's a different group that does that, and they package up the products, and then they're delivered to various retail establishments. One of the things that I was concerned about was, how do you control? I mean, when you look at a room full of plants, I mean, we all know our gardens, right? The weeds get out of control, right? No pun intended. But the weeds get out of control, and the plants, the plants are growing abundantly. I honestly don't know exactly how many tomatoes I have, and who's to say that someone couldn't come in my garden and take a plant, and would I even notice that, right? So I asked the owner about that. How do you control the inventory? And he showed me in their system how incredibly locked down that inventory system is, from the number of seeds to the number of plants to the pounds that come out of that cultivation process, to then when it's distilled out, how much weight you're dealing with in oil. So everything is very carefully followed through the chain, so that there is absolutely no room for someone to slip something in their pocket, or cottage industry takes stuff out of the warehouse, right, and sell them illegally. So that is very, very carefully regulated. And I felt very confident after going through that I felt very secure about how a business like that would manage that kind of risk.
Right. And I guess one of the things that you just said that kind of struck me that I didn't think of is that it all happens on site. So you're not, traveling with a pound of marijuana to another facility to then bake the cookies. Everything's done within that one facility, so there's less...
Yeah, at Sierra Naturals, that's the case.
Right.
So it can be that way. It can also be different facilities.
Right.
having seen the Sierra model, I personally think that that's the preferential
Sure.
model. But that said, it doesn't mean that that has to be the model. So
Right.
you could potentially have a cultivation site where the plant is just grown, and then all of that flower is packaged up, sent someplace else, and it's a production facility, or product is sent to a lab. It's R&D, right? Testing, you know, all that kind of stuff. So there is a fair amount of variety that can occur with how that industry works.
Right. So tell us where the town of Barnstable is in this town council. You know, we've had the moratorium, so people can study the issue.
Right.
Where are we?
So right now where it is that the council is going to be taking a vote at the end of the summer pretty much, or
Okay.
maybe early fall, right? We have to make a decision by December 31st. That is
Okay.
when the moratorium is up. So, you know, if at the very least it's important to have a full, robust discussion at town council. So at the very least, we need to have both sides, pro and against, represented. We need those conversations, you know, transparent and open to the public, an opportunity for the public to come forth and engage. And where the vote ultimately ends up, you know, we don't know. But how it's going to work at this point is that there is going to be leadership. The president and vice president, I know, are coming forth with a motion for an all-out ban, and that'll happen in June. There's sort of the rough timeline is that you know, any ordinance to support a retail business would be put forth to the planning board, so it gets referred to planning board,
Okay.
and then there's two public hearings. And so when you think of the timeline of all that, it's probably, you know, September, but you never know with how things move forward. Something could come up, and maybe folks are, you know, kind of, you know, maybe they like the ordinance, but there are parts of it that they're unhappy with, right?
Sure.
So it could go back to a working group and revisions done. So when the vote might actually happen, I'm not entirely sure. But at the very start, we're starting this process in June.
Okay.
And it has to be figured out by the 31st of December.
Right. So that brings me kind of to my last question on this is, across towns that run on different government, town meeting, basically, is that the voters had the ability to decide that. Will there be that ballot question for Barnstable to decide, or will it only
No, because
be
the
through
ballot, because the ballot question that took place was yay or nay.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
So that was the ballot question.
Okay.
So now, because of the state rule, the state law, you know, now it's up to the towns to come forward and decide no or yes, and if yes, how and where, right? So that's where we're at. And as I said, I think it's really important for that full discussion to happen on both sides, because you know, there are some misconceptions, and I'm not saying that once you get rid of those, it's a done deal, and we should be good to go forward. But we need to dispel misconceptions. We need to talk about the science, the economics, potential for growth. I mean, we talk about the blue economy. This can be the green economy, right?
Sure.
You talk about new growth dollars, which is always something you know, towns are concerned about. Certainly we are. We've got some huge issues surrounding housing, wastewater, opioid abuse, and there's a lot of evidence that's coming out now on the ability of or the use of marijuana to reduce opioid addiction and use. So there are a lot of things to discuss before we make a full decision, and I think it's important for us to do that.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for
You're so
coming in and
welcome.
giving us kind of an overview of this, because I know it's been in the news with other towns doing their votes, and that, you know, we've had questions of where is Barnstable in all of this.
And you know, it's an interesting, it's kind of an interesting situation we find ourselves in, right? Because the state has made it legal to possess and consume. And so, you know, people can do this, but then if you want to consume, now you have to go the illegal route, right, and search out the dealer. And you know, the concern about that, again, is lack of regulation, lack of a good product, so it's a safety issue, right?
Right.
And also what has been shown is that in markets where it has been legalized, there was a study done in Colorado, there was a study done in Washington State, that use by youth has gone down. So there are a lot of, like I said, a lot of things to discuss and make sure is out on the table before we make a definitive decision on this.
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
Thank
you, Britt.
Very much.
Here's a look at our community calendar. In the wake of recent tragic events, the Barnstable Police Canine Foundation is seeking to purchase cameras for the protection and improved safety of both the Barnstable Police Department canines and their handlers. Special infrared and remote voice command enabled dog cameras exist that allow canine officers to better assess and respond to situations, but the state-of-the-art cameras are costly. A single camera costs $22,000. It is the Foundation's hope that with the help of the community, enough money will be raised to actually purchase one camera, or maybe even both of the needed cameras. Todd Marcus, president and brewmaster of Cape Cod Beer, was moved by the mission and offered to produce and sell a specially named beer in honor of the effort. Marcus also committed to donating 100% of the gross revenue from the beer sold in bottles and pints back to the cause. This is a commitment of $10,000. Cape Cod Beer is hosting a kickoff beer release party to encourage the community to help the foundation achieve its goal. The beer is being called Fur Missile, which is a name that is affectionately used by the handlers to refer to what a working canine looks like as it launches itself towards its objective. The kickoff beer release party will be held on Friday, June 1st from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the brewery. The local band, 57 Heavy, has donated their time to perform for the cause, and there will be a nominal fee at the door, which will go directly to the foundation. Get your tickets early. There is limited capacity. I'm Paula Hersey, and thank you for watching Barnstable Today.